Get ready for a spectacular review.
Rontro, he's here today and he's gonna show you all just how to play. It's Rontro Gaming. Go grab your controllers now and load up that unsafe file. It's Rontro Gaming. Rontro.
Hello everyone and welcome to another review. Halloween is just around the corner and it is by far my favorite holiday. I've been saving a few games for the Halloween holiday and this is one of my favorite Super Nintendo games, Super Castlevania 4. Super Castlevania 4, known as in Japan, and pardon me if I pronounce this wrong, Akumajo Dorakura, which translates as Devil's Castle Dracula, is a platform game developed and published by Konami on October 31st, 1991 in Japan, December 4th, 1991 in North America, and November 23rd, 1992 in Europe, and was the first Castlevania game for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. It features expanded play control, 16-bit and SNES Mode 7 graphics. Its soundtrack featured brand new pieces and remixes based on previous Castlevania music. Following the same setting as Castlevania on the NES, the game takes place in 1691 Transylvania, where the vampire hunter Simon Belmont is called upon to destroy the vampire Dracula. When the game first starts up, we are greeted with a stone wall with bugs and spiders crawling around on it. The scene slowly scrolls up to show the title screen of the game. If we continue to wait a few seconds, we are given scrolling text that sets the plot for this game. Every 100 years, the forces of good mysteriously start to weaken. Thus, the power of Dracula starts to revive itself. His power grows stronger and stronger every 100 years. Dracula has revived many times. However, his sinister actions have been consistently thwarted by the Belmont family. It's been 100 years since the last confrontation between Dracula and the Belmont family, but now the serenity of Transylvania is being threatened by destructive forces. On a dark and eerie night, Dracula rose from his grave to unleash his destructive power over the countryside. Once again, Simon Belmont is called upon to destroy Dracula. With only his whip and courage, he sets out to restore peace to Transylvania. What can I really say about the gameplay of Super Castlevania 4? It really is superb, but I'm not going to lie, it does have some faults. You won't hear too many people talk bad about Super Castlevania 4. It is regarded as one of the best in the series. Super Castlevania 4 is a side-scrolling platform game where the player takes control of Simon Belmont through 11 beautifully designed levels. Its concept is pretty much the same as the first and third games in the series. You fight your way through the level with Simon's trusty whip, the Vampire Killer. Throughout the level, you'll be whipping candles that have various items such as food, weapons, and hearts. These weapons are a dagger, an axe, a throwing cross that works like a boomerang, holy water, and a clock that stops time. The hearts you pick up act as your ammo for these sub-weapons. I love the control that you get with the Vampire Killer in this game. You can whip in any of 8 directions. This makes some parts much easier than they would have been if you could still only whip left and right like the games from the NES. A returning feature to Castlevania is being able to continue your progress through a password system. Need to head to work and you're on the 5th level? Worry not, there's a password for that. On stage 8, need to go to bed for school? Worry not, there's a password for that. Now, if you recall at the beginning of the gameplay section of this video, it really is superb, but I did allude to some faults. One of these faults is slowdown. There are some parts that slow down because of too many enemies on the screen, but there are large sections of the game that you are battling slowdown. The key example is in level 4, where you're in the area where it looks like you're in some sort of tumbler, which they achieved using Mode 7 graphics. Another thing I picked up playing through the game for this review is the hitbox of the whip. There are times where I am clearly hitting the enemy and they don't take any damage. I found this to be the most common when trying to hit enemies from a platform below. There are other times where I miss the enemy completely, but they are destroyed anyway. This seems common when hitting enemies below you while holding the whip out. Other than these slight issues, the game is pretty solid, and I promise you a fun experience. When Super Castlevania 4 came out, the Super Nintendo was still fairly new, so this made this game an early launch title. For being such, it had some amazing graphics. Everything looks great in this game, from the sprites to the stages and even the backgrounds. The color palette really sets the mood for each level. Combine that with some Mode 7 graphics in some places and you truly have a beautiful game. Each of the bosses in this game looks great. One of the most interesting bosses in the game is the Shrinking Rock Monster, or Stone Golem. As you whip this guy, he gets smaller and faster. He throws rocks and the ceiling is falling down on top of Simon. What makes this one of the most interesting bosses in the game was the use of Mode 7 graphics, which allows for the spinning effect after his death. There are even parallax scrolling backgrounds in this game. I love this effect, especially in the cave level, which is stage 3. It's a beautiful stage. What else can I really say about the graphics? This game is beautiful and you'll enjoy seeing the sights in the game as much as playing it. The soundtrack of this game is awesome. The game has some original pieces as well as remixes of old classics. Just listen to one of my favorite tracks from this game and you'll hear how truly awesome the music in this game really is. As I said, it's an awesome soundtrack. We have two composers to thank for this, Masanori Adichie and Taru Kudo. Masahiro Yuno, the director of Super Castlevania 4, wanted to make the environment of the game more interactive and was proud of how the game's sound effects and music contributed to the atmosphere. Super Castlevania 4 was directed by Masahiro Uno. He was also the main programmer, and this was his first 16-bit game. Uno liked the original Castlevania for the NES the most, and wanted to make a pure action game that was similar to it. Uno considers Super Castlevania 4 a remake of the original Castlevania to some extent. Many of the new features, such as multi-directional whipping, were introduced to make it a less frustrating game. Another example of this is that you, the player, have more control over Simon while walking up and down stairs. Due to the team being small, everyone was involved with designing the game. Some ideas came from the creative artists and others by the programmers' experiments. The team drew maps on paper and a lot was changed as the game was developed. Mitsuru Yaida programmed Simon Belmont and implemented the game's whip system, which introduced some new gameplay elements that wasn't possible on the Super Nintendo's predecessor. As the enemy and boss programmer, Uno conceived some rough ideas and additional programmers would implement more detailed boss patterns. Earlier bosses were designed to be easier so that players could discover weak points in the most effective weapons without trying the battles over and over. Uno worked on the Japanese version of the game as well as the North American version. Of course, just like most games brought over to the US and in some cases Europe, some censorship was made. Uno was asked to alter the color palette in order to remove depictions of blood in Stage 8. Upon Super Castlevania 4's release in North America, the game was acclaimed by critics. Nintendo Power gave the game 4 overall scores of 4, 4, 4.5, and 4.5 out of 5. The magazine cited the game's graphics, music, and action sequences as positives. Super Castlevania 4 was named by Nintendo Power in a 2006 issue as the 66th best game made on a Nintendo system. According to the last issue, though, it was ranked 27th. The game sold a little over 500,000 copies worldwide. Overall, Super Castlevania 4 is easily one of the best games you'll find on the Super Nintendo. It has awesome graphics, responsive controls, and great music. I'd love to give this game a 10 out of 10, and my childhood self would have. When I replayed this game for this review, I tried to do so without the nostalgia glasses. Due to the slight slowdown in places and the wonky hitbox for the whip, I have to give this game an 8 out of 10. Has this game aged well? Without a doubt. Even with those couple slight issues, you will still find hours of fun. If you're looking to pick up a physical copy of this game, expect to pay around $40. You can also buy and download a copy of this game for a fraction of the price on the Wii and Wii U. I've already told you all about the story of how I ended up finally getting a Super Nintendo because of my father buying Mega Man X before buying the system. Not only was he a huge Mega Man fan, but he loved the Castlevania series. A couple weeks after getting our Super Nintendo and my dad was finished demolishing Mega Man X, our next game was Super Castlevania 4. I walked in after school one day and found my father playing a new game. I already realized it was a new Castlevania game before my dad said a word. I kicked off my shoes, threw my book bag to the side, and admired everything the game had to offer as my father whipped his way through the game. That does it for this review. If you enjoyed watching this, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already done so. If you have any fond memories of Super Castlevania 4 you'd like to share, then please leave it in the comment section below, along with any questions, comments, suggestions, or requests. Also, make sure you share this with your family and friends. Be sure to check out all the links in the description below for more content on my partner, Retromageddon's channel, and our combined channel, R&R Gaming. Until next time, my friends, game on. Here's a quick tip. Find the game too easy? Then after you defeat Dracula, watch through the entirety of the credits. When the screen reads, "Presented by Konami," press the start button. You will start back at the beginning of the game, but this time there are more enemies. The boss fights remain the same, however.
You know what to do here. Click one of these videos for more content.